Remember back in 2018? It really felt like the self-driving future was just right around the corner. Well, today we're going to jump in a time machine and go back to that moment. We're going to explore a really ambitious vision from a case study that year, a city built from the ground up entirely for autonomous cars.
So, picture this. The case study drops us right into this fictional city called Levangerstadt. You get into a taxi, you say where you want to go, and it just drives. No one's in the driver's seat. This was the scene they were setting back in 2018, a future that felt so close you could almost touch it.
Now, the techie term for this driverless dream is Level 5 autonomy. And what that means is the car does everything. It handles all the driving, everywhere, in any weather, with absolutely zero help from a person. It's the holy grail of self-driving tech, and in 2018, it was the prize that every major car and tech company was racing to win.
And you can just feel the optimism on this slide. I mean, look at those dates. 2020, 2021, you had everyone from Ford and Tesla to Google and Uber all saying, "We're almost there." It was basically a corporate space race, and it really felt like the finish line was just a year or two away.
So this brings us back to the heart of our case study, the Levangerstadt project. And this wasn't just about throwing a few robo-taxis onto streets we already have. No, this was about designing an entire city, from scratch, specifically for a world without drivers.
The guy leading this whole thing was Sven Larsson, the project's technical lead. And his vision was, frankly, radical. No human drivers allowed, period. If you wanted to get around Levangerstadt, you either had to park your regular car at the town line and leave it there, or you had to use their system. And that system, it had two parts. For a personal trip, you just pull out your phone and summon an autonomous taxi, kind of like an Uber today. But if you were going to a central spot, like a shopping center, you'd call up an autonomous bus that would figure out the smartest route based on who else needed a ride. It was all about on-demand transit.
Okay, so why? Why go to all this trouble? Why ban human drivers completely? Well, the whole motivation really came down to one pretty sobering number, 90%. That's the estimated slice of all traffic accidents that are caused by us, by human error.
So the thinking was, if you could just remove the human from the equation, you could create this transportation utopia, a world with basically no car crashes, no more sitting in frustrating traffic jams, and all that time you spend commuting, you could get it back to work, or read a book, or just relax.
This all sounds amazing, right? But how does the car actually do it? How does a machine not only replicate, but actually do better than human perception and reflexes? All right, let's dive into the tech, starting with how the car sees the world.
So when you break it all down, the super complex job of driving really comes down to these three things, which have to happen perfectly, over and over, every single second. The car has to know exactly where it is, what's going on around it, and what it should do next.
And the secret sauce to that second step, perceiving the world, is this idea called sensor fusion. Just think about how your own senses work. You don't just see or just hear. Your brain is constantly blending information from your eyes, your ears, your sense of balance to give you a full picture of where you are. A car does the exact same thing, just with a whole bunch of high-tech sensors.
And here are those senses. You've got LIDAR, which builds this incredible 3D math using lasers. Radar is great because it can see right through fog and rain. Cameras, of course, are for reading signs and seeing colors. And ultrasound helps with parking in tight spots. All of that data gets mashed together and checked against super detailed GPS and HD maps to create one single, crystal clear picture of the world.
Okay, so the car can see. It has this flood of data coming in. But just seeing isn't the same as understanding, right? So now we have to talk about the AI, the brain, that takes all that information and actually makes sense of it.
The real game changer for this was a shift to a new kind of AI called a Convolutional Neural Network, or CNN. See, older AIs would just look at an image one pixel at a time, which was super slow and honestly not that smart. But a CNN is built to see how pixels relate to each other, how they form shapes and objects. It's much more like how our own brains work, and it was a huge leap forward.
And Sven Larsson explained it perfectly. The AI basically learns like a kid. The first layer of this network spots really simple things, like a line or a curve. The next layer puts those together and sees, oh, that's a circle and a rectangle. Then the layer after that combines those to identify a wheel or a window, until finally it recognizes the whole thing, a person, a bike, another car.
So, the car can see, and it can understand what it's seeing.
The last big piece of the puzzle is figuring out where to go. And this isn't just about dodging obstacles in front of you, it's about plotting the best way to get from point A to point B.
What's really interesting here is that the Levangerstadt project had two different routing problems to solve. For the taxis, they used Dijkstra's algorithm, which is great at finding the single fastest route for one person. But the buses had a much tougher problem. They had to find the most efficient route to pick up a bunch of different people. This is a version of the famous traveling salesman problem, which is so hard it's practically impossible to solve perfectly. So they used a simpler, good enough algorithm that just tells the bus, okay, go to the closest stop next.
By 2018, it really seemed like the technology path was getting clearer. It was hard, for sure, but you could see how to get there. But, as Sven himself admitted, the biggest roadblocks weren't actually about the tech. They were about us.
Because even if you get the tech perfect, you're left with these massive social and ethical questions. I mean, what happens to the millions of people who drive for a living? How do you program a car to make an impossible moral choice in a crash? And can we really trust an AI when its decision-making is basically a black box that even its creators don't fully understand? These were the really tough questions then. And guess what? We're still wrestling with them now.
And that brings us to the most famous dilemma of them all, the trolley problem. But for the age of AI, let's make it real. A crash is about to happen. The car has to make a choice. Hit a pedestrian or swerve to save its passenger, but maybe hit something or someone else. What does the code tell it to do? And who gets to decide that? The person who wrote the code? The person who owns the car? A government committee? There's no easy answer.
Which brings us right back to today. Those super ambitious 2020 and 2021 deadlines, well, they've come and gone. The tech is way better, but true level 5 autonomy still feels like it's just over the horizon. So looking back at this vision from 2018, with all its incredible technical promise and these really deep human challenges, the question I want to leave you with is this. What do you think the real roadblock is now? Is it still the technology? Is it the ethics? Or is it something else entirely?